Most people hear about Bitcoin after it already explodes. That's usually how it happens. Bitcoin jumps 50%. The news starts talking about it. Your coworker suddenly becomes a crypto expert. Your cousin starts posting screenshots on Instagram. And then millions of people rush in asking the same question, wait, what even is Bitcoin? And honestly, by that point, emotions are already controlling the conversation. Some people think Bitcoin is going to replace money entirely. Others think it's the dumbest investment in human history. And somewhere in the middle, most normal people are just confused. Because here's the thing, nobody explains Bitcoin properly. People either explain it like a cult or like a computer science lecture. So in this video, I want to explain why Bitcoin became so important, why people compare it to gold, why governments can't easily stop it, why there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and why some investors genuinely believe Bitcoin could become the future of money. Now, does that mean it definitely will replace money? Not necessarily. But whether you love Bitcoin or hate it, you need to understand why so many intelligent people take it serious. Let's start with the biggest idea behind Bitcoin. Scarcity. Part 1, Why scarcity changes everything. Here's what most people don't realize. Money becomes less valuable when there's too much of it. That's not politics. That's math. Imagine there are only 10 tickets to a concert. Those tickets become valuable because they're limited. Now imagine the organizers suddenly print 10 million more tickets. The value collapses instantly. Scarcity matters. And Bitcoin was designed around this idea from day one. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. Ever. Not approximately, exactly 21 million. And this single idea is what separates Bitcoin from traditional money. Because governments can print more money whenever they want. And historically, they do. A lot. Now look, printing money isn't automatically evil. Governments print money during crises to stabilize economies, support banks, and stimulate growth. But the side effect is inflation. Meaning, your money slowly loses purchasing power over time. This is why older generations constantly say things like, back in my day, a burger cost $1, because the value of money changes. Now compare that to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's supply is mathematically fixed. Nobody can wake up tomorrow and decide, let's create 5 trillion more Bitcoin. The system literally doesn't allow it. And psychologically, humans are naturally attracted to scarce things. Luxury brands understand this perfectly. Rolex understands this. Nike understands this. Ferrari understands this. Limited supply creates demand. And Bitcoin turns scarcity into software. Which is honestly kind of genius. Part 2, the 21 million supply. Now you might be wondering, okay, but why 21 million specifically, honestly? There's no magical reason. Satoshi Nakamoto, the anonymous creator of Bitcoin, simply designed the system that way. But what matters isn't the exact number. What matters is that the supply is predictable. This is huge. Because uncertainty destroys trust in money. Imagine if your bank randomly changed how many dollars existed every week. That would be chaos. Bitcoin is the opposite. Everybody knows the rules in advance. And this predictability creates confidence among Bitcoin supporters. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Not all 21 million Bitcoin are even available. Millions are believed to be permanently lost. People forgot passwords. Lost hard drives. Lost wallet access forever. Which means the actual usable supply may be far lower. And the scarcer something becomes, the more emotionally valuable it feels to people. Again, psychology matters here. A lot. Part 3, How Bitcoin mining actually works. Okay. Now let's talk about mining. Because this is where most beginners get confused. Bitcoin mining does not mean people are digging digital coins out of the ground. Mining is basically how the Bitcoin network stays secure. Here's the simple explanation. Thousands of computers around the world compete to solve complex math problems. When a computer solves the problem first, it validates a block of transactions. And as a reward, the miner receives newly created Bitcoin. That's how new Bitcoin enters circulation. Now here's what most people don't realize: mining isn't just about creating Bitcoin. Mining is what protects the network. Because in order to cheat the system, you would need enormous computing power. Like absurd amounts. And the larger Bitcoin becomes, the harder it becomes to attack. That's one reason Bitcoin has survived for so long. Now critics will immediately point out, but Bitcoin mining uses a ton of electricity, and yes, that's true. Bitcoin consumes massive energy. Supporters argue this energy secures a decentralized global financial system. Critics argue it's inefficient and environmentally damaging. This debate is still happening today. But regardless of your opinion, the mining system is a core reason Bitcoin works. Part 4: The halving: why Bitcoin gets harder to create. Now this is one of the most important concepts in Bitcoin. The halving. And honestly, this is where Bitcoin starts sounding almost engineered to become scarce over time. Every 4 years approximately, the Bitcoin mining reward gets cut in half. That's the halving. So if miners previously earned 6.25 Bitcoin per block, after the halving they earn 3.125 Bitcoin. Then later 1.5625. And so on. This process continues until almost all Bitcoin are mined. Now think about what this means economically. New Bitcoin enters circulation more slowly over time, which increases scarcity. And historically, Bitcoin price cycles have often exploded after halvings. Now obviously, past performance does not guarantee future results. But many investors obsess over halvings because supply growth keeps shrinking. And this creates one of the most powerful narratives in investing: increasing demand plus fixed supply. That combination is what makes people believe Bitcoin could continue rising long term. Part 5: Bitcoin vs gold. This is where the comparison gets fascinating. Bitcoin is often called digital gold, and honestly, the comparison makes sense in some ways. Gold became valuable because it's rare, difficult to mine, durable, hard to counterfeit, and widely trusted. Bitcoin shares many of those characteristics. It's scarce, difficult to produce, difficult to fake, portable, and globally recognized, but Bitcoin also solves some problems gold has. For example, imagine trying to send $50 million worth of gold across the world. That's a nightmare. Now compare that to Bitcoin. You can theoretically transfer enormous amounts globally in minutes. That's powerful. Bitcoin is also easier to divide. You can own tiny fractions instantly. Now does this mean Bitcoin will replace gold? Not necessarily. Gold has thousands of years of trust behind it. Bitcoin is still young. Very young. But here's what most people don't realize: younger generations often trust digital systems more than physical assets. To someone born into the internet era, digital ownership feels normal. And that generational shift may become extremely important over time. Part 6: Why governments can't easily control Bitcoin. Now this is probably the most revolutionary part of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is decentralized, meaning no single government controls it. No company owns it. No CEO runs it. No central bank operates it. The network exists across thousands of computers worldwide. And this makes Bitcoin incredibly difficult to shut down completely. Now governments can regulate exchanges. They can tax crypto. They can ban certain platforms. But stopping Bitcoin itself, that's much harder. Because Bitcoin doesn't live in one building. It lives everywhere at once. And this idea is deeply attractive to many people. Especially people living in countries with unstable currencies, high inflation, banking restrictions, or government corruption. For them, Bitcoin isn't just an investment. It can represent financial freedom. Now obviously governments don't love losing control over money systems. Because controlling money is one of the biggest powers governments have. So the relationship between governments and Bitcoin is complicated. Some countries embrace it. Some heavily restrict it. Some are still figuring it out. But regardless, Bitcoin forced governments to pay attention to digital money in a way they never had before. Part 7: Why people think Bitcoin could replace money. Okay. Now let's address the massive question. Could Bitcoin actually replace money? Honestly, probably not completely. At least not anytime soon. And here's why. Money needs three major things. 1. Medium of exchange. 2. Store of value. 3. Stable unit of account. Bitcoin works reasonably well as a store of value for some people. But as everyday money, it still struggles. Because Bitcoin's price is extremely volatile. Imagine buying coffee with Bitcoin today, then realizing tomorrow that Bitcoin increased 15%. That volatility makes spending psychologically difficult. People don't like spending assets they think might rise massively later. This is actually called Gresham's law in economics. People tend to spend weaker money and save stronger money. And this is why many Bitcoin supporters today view it less as currency and more as digital gold, a long-term savings asset. But even if Bitcoin never replaces traditional money completely, it may still become incredibly important globally. Because for the first time in history, people have a decentralized digital asset outside traditional financial systems. And that changes things a lot. Part 8. The biggest misunderstanding about Bitcoin. Here's the biggest mistake beginners make. They think Bitcoin is only about getting rich. That's why so many people enter crypto emotionally. They see overnight millionaires, crazy price charts, luxury lifestyles, and they assume Bitcoin is just gambling. But the deeper conversation around Bitcoin is actually about trust, money, inflation, ownership, decentralization, and financial control. Now, does that mean Bitcoin is guaranteed success? Absolutely not. Bitcoin could still fail. Technology changes fast. Regulations change fast. Competition changes fast. But ignoring Bitcoin entirely because it sounds weird, that's probably not smart either. Because even if Bitcoin itself changes, the ideas it introduced are already reshaping finance globally. Look, you do not need to become a crypto maximalist. You do not need to put your life savings into Bitcoin. And you definitely should not blindly trust influencers screaming, "Buy now before it's too late," but understanding Bitcoin. That's becoming increasingly important. Because whether Bitcoin succeeds massively or whether it evolves into something completely different, it already changed the global conversation about money forever. And honestly, we're probably still very early in understanding where all this goes. But Bitcoin can't do everything, and that's where Ethereum changed the game. Because Bitcoin introduced digital money, Ethereum introduced programmable money. And trust me, that completely changed crypto forever.